In recent years, Hasbro's been experimenting with their Marvel Legends line, and they've started introducing these 2-packs. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the Storm and Thunderbird 2-pack. This is particularly exciting because of course this is their first appearance outfits. And in Thunderbird's case, this is the first time this figure has ever been produced in this line. While Storm, despite having many different figures made of her in the Marvel Legends line over recent years, this is the first time we're actually having her in a 70s outfit. And this is a much beloved costume, so this is particularly exciting. And this release is also significant because it more or less ties up a full classic roster of X-Men. The packaging is pretty straightforward. There is a nice big window display there with a nice X logo behind them, which is bright and colourful and very effective. Although I must admit I'm not overly keen on the grey outer packaging. I find that a little bit dull and a little bit underwhelming. But thankfully both the side art and the reverse of the packaging has illustrated portraits of these characters, and I think they both look fantastic and they're very colourful and definitely make this very collector friendly. I'll start by looking at the Storm because I think this is the figure that most people are most excited about. I think the presentation of this figure is absolutely brilliant. She comes with the lightning hands in the packaging and obviously the effect of her hair, wind blown, wind swept back, and her cape billowing there. So I think this looks really dramatic. It's a really nice solid looking figure and the paint is applied perfectly. So the overall presentation is top notch. Now in terms of articulation, she does of course have that ball jointed head there which allows her to spin her head 360 degrees and look up and down a really good distance as well. Thankfully the hairpiece is actually quite soft, so there's no hindrance there to moving that about, which is great. Likewise, she has the ball jointed shoulder, and of course that cape is also a fairly flexible plastic, so that does not get in the way. She has the single jointed elbow which bends more than 90 degrees, and she also has the swivel wrist and of course that hinge there to allow it to bend forwards or backwards as well, and again huge range of motion on that, which is fantastic. She does of course have that chest articulation which allows her to pivot all the way around and look up and down as well, which is great, and this does of course replace the ab crunch. Now she also has those hinge hips there, so they kick out front to the side, and she's got the thigh swivel as well, so this is absolutely brilliant stuff. Her legs obviously kick all the way forwards and they kick a really good distance back as well, but she also has those double jointed knees, so we can get a really good range of motion out of those joints, which is absolutely fantastic. And then finally she has the ankle pivot as well, which allows her to bend the forwards and backwards on that hinge, but also swivel from side to side. The head sculpt is absolutely spot on. Hasbro have really nailed it. I feel like they've really hit their stride in recent years because everything seems to be coming together now. The moulds are absolutely really solid, super accurate to what we see in the panels on the page, and there's a lot of detail and the colours, and I just think overall the paint apps are really solid, and I think the textures of these figures are really nice. And the little extras that they now include with that attention to detail, so in this case it's the lightning fingers. I love this. I think this is such a simple thing, but it's so effective and just creates really dramatic poses. And speaking of extras, Storm does come with a few. She comes with a spare relaxed head, an extra cloak that again is calm and relaxed, a pair of fists, and a pair of open hands as well. So for me this is more than enough, and I feel like they've given her everything you could possibly want. And there's enough here to create a whole range of different looks and poses for this character, so it feels very versatile and always dynamic. Next up we have Thunderbird, and as I said, this is the first time this character has ever made an appearance in the line, so much anticipated. Obviously the character was very short-lived in the comic books, but did have a bit of a legacy, so it's quite nice to actually have him finally in figure form, although I do think of the two he is the weaker in this pack. The presentation is very nice, he's bright and colourful, and is again comic book accurate. The body mould they've used is one we've seen a number of times before, but it fits perfectly here, and I think overall it's a nice looking figure. The head sculpt of course is brand new and looks really solid. That's a good likeness for what we see on the page. I also really like that they've bothered to give him the bandana at the top there with the eagle feathers, because I think that's really nicely presented and nicely painted. However, I am less impressed when it comes to the bands and the belt because there's not a lot of detailing there. There's no shading, there's no little detail there to just separate those pieces out, which I think would have been a nice touch. Because as it is just one tone and it does look a little bit simplistic. But the key thing that really frustrates me with this figure is the tassels at the bottom there, because they are a separate piece, they're not moulded into the leg, and so therefore they have this tendency to slip off and fall down around his ankles. And again, there's no detailing on either of those tassels, there's no shading, there's no effort to sort of make them individual, so they look a bit cheap. Thankfully, the articulation, of course, is top notch. So again, he's got that same ball jointed headpiece there, so he can look up and down, he can swivel from side to side, no problems whatsoever, and this is really, really good. He has the ball jointed shoulder, again, creating a large range of motion there, which is fantastic. He's got the bicep swivel, and he's got the double jointed elbows as well. So that's absolutely fantastic. Also, he's got the swivel wrist, and of course it is also hinged, so that does mean that it can bend forwards and backwards as we would expect. And thankfully there's no impediment there from the bands or anything like that, so this is really solid. And pleasingly, he has both the swivel at the waist and the ab crunch. Now, some people aren't as keen on the ab crunch because they think it makes the figure look ugly, and I can understand that because that is a big joint that you see in the waist there. But for me, I personally love it because I'd rather have the articulation than the seamless joins. And finally, in the legs, of course, he does have the same hinge hips there, so his legs do kick out to the side, they kick forwards, he's got the thigh swivel, and of course he's got the double jointed knees, and he also has a swivel at the calf, which is quite nice. Again, that can be problematic with those tassels, but otherwise, pretty solid. And of course, he does have that ankle pivot there as well, so again, hinged going forwards and backwards, and rocks from side to side. Sadly, Thunderbird is underserved when it comes to accessories. He comes with nothing else in this packaging. He doesn't have a spare head or an extra pair of hands. This is all you get. But overall, I think this is an absolutely fantastic set. I think more predominantly for the Storm figure, but it's really nice to have the Thunderbird as well. Like I said, this does give us a chance to actually finally fill out our second Genesis roster. Most of the other figures here have been released in other formats, many different variants, so you can swap out which ones you want to use from across the years. I've personally opted to have a few Toy Biz in there to just create a little bit more unique differences between the characters, but you can throw in your own Hasbro versions, and you got finally a full lineup here, which I think look really great. I'm really, really pleased to have these together at last. I think the shining star in this set is the Storm. Just a wonderful figure. It has all those accessories, many different looks that you can go with for the character. It's beautifully rendered. They've done such a nice job with the paint apps and made it a really fun and interesting figure to have in the set. And of course, it has been long anticipated, so it's really wonderful to have it realised at last. The Thunderbird, I think, is a really solid figure. I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think they've done overall a really nice job of him as well. I'm not impressed with the tassels on the ankles. I find that a little bit frustrating, and I wish they just added a little bit more detailing and a bit more shading to the paint apps. It would have been nice to just give him a little bit more love and just throw in a few extra accessories there or something, an alternate head or an extra pair of hands, just to make him feel more rounded and have a bit more variation. But other than that, I can't really fault it too much. I do think that the set overall is definitely 5 stars. And yeah, I think this is a really welcome addition to the collection, especially because we're getting 2 new figures that we've not had before, which is absolutely wonderful. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like. And remember to subscribe, as I'll be posting more videos soon.